have everybody at 9:32 for EOHS 502 and all the guests. We have some guests here, some guests online. I'm happy to introduce Dr. Catharina Wesseling, fondly named Ineke Wesseling. She originates in Netherlands and followed a love interest, if I may say so, to Costa Rica, went to medical school in Costa Rica, and then got her PhD at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden. She subsequently, I think, founded and worked at the Central American Institute for Studies on Toxic Substances, so-called IRET, at the National University in Rica. And between 2003 and 2013, she was the regional director of the Central American Program on Work, Environment, and Health, called SALPA in Spanish. And she's a member of La Isla Network. She is one of the original researchers on chronic kidney disease of undetermined origin. There was a newly recognized epidemic, which she had enrolled in, of young men that were dying of kidney failure in Central America, and embarked on a research journey that continues to today, being involved in founding an NGO that works particularly on this and other things. And, I admire her so much as a researcher, and also honored to call her a friend. So,
yes.
Well,
for me, it's an honor to be here. Thanks for the invitation, Mr. Force, and the University of Illinois. I'm going
to get you to stand closer to the microphone.
Yes, is that okay? Okay. You correct me when you know here. No, I am going to tell you a little bit about the journey we have made in this chronic kidney disease epidemic that we first discovered in Central America. Linda introduced me very kindly. As Linda said, I am currently working for La Isla Network. It is an NGO that was started in 2007 as a very small organization. The leader of this organization, Tracy Glazer, he was a filmmaker, he was in Nicaragua, and he found a demonstration at the gates of a sugarcane company. And it was about young people dying because of chronic kidney disease, and no one knew why this was. Neither the workers, nor the company, nor the government. And that organization was formed with the aim to end the epidemic of chronic kidney disease of unknown cause at that time in Central America. I was part of that program of health and work and health in Central America at that time, and we had found the same problem, of course, in our work, and we're starting to investigate that. And we united forces. So what did we see, really? Well, this is a very, very good photo of what the work of sugarcane cutting is about. Most of the sick men were sugarcane cutters, and there was a village there that was called by the local community. It's called La Isla, the village, but they called it La Isla of the widows, the island of the widows, because there were so many women left without a husband. And that is why the name of the organization is La Isla Network. You can see the enormous effort that is being made in this work, and young workers, really. And the social cost of the disease, I was going to show you a few pictures to understand what we were facing without knowing what it was. Okay. This is a photo of a very young man, and you can see his wife, his child, and he has already end-stage kidney disease. And this is even a more terrible picture. So the whole community was affected by this epidemic in a terrible way. This is also a very impressive picture. This woman who is holding the photo of her husband and her son, who both died of kidney disease. And actually, kidney failure is the most frequent cause of mortality not only in Nicaragua, but also in El Salvador and other endemic areas in young men. So uniting forces, I was still at the university and then later went over full-time to the Isla Network. We started to do interdisciplinary research and action around this epidemic. Well, we have an interdisciplinary international research team with occupational physicians, epidemiologists, physiologists, heat experts, economists, and even psychology. And now in 2026, we are a rather large research and advisory organization. We are working all around the world to address heat stress mostly, also other occupational exposures, but heat stress continues to be our main topic. And yeah, what we want is to have data-driven occupational safety and health interventions, but they are based on evidence. And we have, as I said, this transdisciplinary approach with the international research team. And we try to provide evidence-based frameworks, legal and policy frameworks to businesses, to workers, and to governments. So that's about what we are doing in the macro level. But what is really heat stress, occupational heat stress or work-related heat stress? It's a combination of environmental heat and internal heat. And the internal heat comes from the muscular work. So the greater the physical strain the worker has, the hotter his internal body temperature gets. So that is the whole issue. The occupational heat stress is the exposure, both types of heat, environmental and internal heat, and the effect is the hyperthermia, the increasing body temperature. And what does that cause? Well, first of all, heat illness, as most of you may know, we all have had a little bit at some time. From a headache up to more severe symptoms, heat exhaustion is that called in medical terms, up to heat stroke, which is a life-threatening condition. If that is not treated, it's a very severe overheating of the body. The person dies, and there are many workers and also athletes once in a while that have a fatal outcome. But also in acute situations, you can have an acute kidney injury, and I will show you later that it is not infrequent, but also subclinical acute damage of the kidney. So it's not very, it's not visible. The person doesn't have symptoms like an acute kidney injury that ends up in the hospital, but there is little damage. And then it leads to chronic kidney disease. Also, there is, when we have occupational heat stress, an increased accident risk. That's very well studied. The hotter it is and the more affected the workers are, their cognitive function gets affected, they sweat and they cannot hold their tools, whatever. The accident risk increases considerably. And also, and that is important, it's not a health risk, but it is reduced productivity. And economic issues are also health issues. The International Labour Organization has now really recognized the magnitude of the problem. In its last publication, I think it's from 2000 and 2024, beginning 2025, they estimate that 70% of the global workforce is exposed to excessive heat. I find that's a rather incredible estimate, but it is the estimate of the ILO. And that leads to almost 23 million non-fatal injuries and almost 19,000 fatal injuries annually. So it is a huge problem. Actually, endemic nephropathies are not new. After World War II, there were several areas where there were terrible problems. For example, in Japan, we had the Itai nephropathy caused by cadmium, and then two epidemics or endemic nephropathies in Balkan and also in East Asia, caused by aristologic acid. It's a herb that is used for medicine purposes. Or in the Balkan, it contaminated the wheat, and the wheat was used for bread, and people got ill of that. And then after the 1990s, there were new CKDU outbreaks in India, in Udanam, which is in India, and also in Sri Lanka and in Lesotho. And more recently, we have reports actually from all over the world of the occurrence, the frequent occurrence or abnormal occurrence of CKDU from Africa, Asia, and South America, and even the USA. I'm not going into this, but since it was at that moment when we started to study it, an unknown cause, nobody knew really. Most people thought about pesticides. And well, I was working very, very, very much with pesticides at that moment. And I thought it had no logic at all. You cannot have an epidemic of one single pesticide in so many different places. The use is so heterogeneous. There are so many pesticides. So yeah, we thought from the beginning actually in heat, but most people not. I have highlighted a few causes, etiologies, for example, anti-inflammatory medications, NSAIDs, that workers use quite a bit for musculoskeletal disorders. You can imagine going around with a machete, I don't know how many hours a day. Also fructose, and we have found associations with that and interactions between these things. And in non-occupational, because many people thought about non-occupational etiology, water contamination and whatever, but in fact, that was also not logic, because most of the victims, practically all, were men. And if you have an environmental etiology, it's very far-fetched to think that it would only affect adult men. And so genetic susceptibility, probably, yes. But we focused on occupational heat stress. And you have to think about if you're in the presence of an epidemic, or maybe even epidemics in different parts of the world, with tens of thousands of people, young people dying, many people talk about multifactorial etiology, but in fact, there must be a very strong driver. All diseases are multifactorial. Any that you mention, but in an epidemic, you need something very, very strong. And you cannot think about that maybe he was malnutritioned during pregnancy and had less nephrons, and then got some pesticide exposure, and then suddenly, when they're all adults, they're all starting to die. That is not a logic way of thinking. But of course, none of those factors are good for you, and they may contribute to your risk. But in Mesoamerica, I'm going to talk about Mesoamerica. It's actually the region that is best studied in the world. And a colleague of us made an ecological study about hospital discharge and mortality data, and he found a clear association between a higher prevalence of chronic kidney disease in hotter areas, and also in areas with significant sugarcane farming across all 5 countries that were included. And this is a study that I led. In Costa Rica, we have the problem only in one area, Guanacaste. And we were able in Costa Rica, thanks to very good registers that we have had historically, to 1970, because everybody says, why would we have this now and not before? So we looked at how the development was in Guanacaste. It's the only area where we have the problem. And you can see that the blue lines are men, and the interrupted line is for the country, and Guanacaste is the continuous line. You can see the difference between the mortality, the incidence, and with women there's a little bit of difference, but not so much. And the green line is the development of industrial sugarcane in that area. Well, that is of course an ecological association, but still. And most of the workers that died are sugarcane workers. So we said, well, you have to take action even in the face of uncertainty. We cannot simply continue to study causes and causes and causes if we know that it's very likely that heat stress is a cause. So we started to work on intervention. And our first study place was in El Salvador. There was one sugarcane company that opened the doors and said, okay, come here. And we started a pilot project. It was small, but we made an intervention that was supposed to be in those places, in 2 places, but because of safety reasons, we could only implement it in one of the 2. And here you can see that we did it 2 months into the harvest. We started all these measures that you can see here on the left, water and rest breaks announced, and mobile tents, and that I will explain further. We even had a change in ergonomic way of cutting. And you can see that where we introduced the intervention, the decline that we saw in kidney function in both groups halted there and then stayed stable until the end of the harvest. While in the group that did not receive the intervention, it continued to decline. So that was actually the first very strong evidence that we had that first it is heat stress, and secondly, you can prevent it. So we went to Nicaragua and started to work with a company, Ingenio San Antonio, And we set up something that's called the Adelante Initiative, and that is a really, I think, an outstanding program in terms of prevention and evaluation of the impact of the prevention, because that is often missing. The first year that we went there, we just observed they had already put in place themselves, that company, quite some measures. For example, a work day of 6 hours, which is one of the most difficult things to achieve. They had done that, and other measures. And we were there, we observed it, and we measured the kidney outcomes. And then we started to work with them in improving those measures, evidence-based, during the next harvest, 5 harvests. And right now, well, I don't know if you know something about Nicaragua, but politically it's very difficult, like many other places in the world. And so we are not in the field there, but we still collaborate with them. And actually, next month we will have a meeting with them in Florida, in Miami. But they are continuing, and they continue to monitor and also to develop new technologies that I will talk about a little later. Here are some of the publications that have come out of that, and I can share them with you. So what do we think, or what do we know? From work-related heat stress to chronic kidney disease, how does that go? We go from the heat stress that produces hypothermia in the worker. And then if it is very severe, you can get a clinical acute kidney injury, and that 10% of these people, according to a study of another group, they continue to chronic kidney disease just after one episode of hospitalized kidney injury. But the most frequent is that the acute kidney injury is not so severe, subclinical. The worker continues to work, and you have these repeated injuries daily or weekly or whatever, we don't know. And that causes a cascade of changes in the tubules of the kidney, and that causes a decline in kidney function gradually, and ends also up in chronic kidney disease, which is now called chronic kidney disease of non-traditional origin, because it's unrelated to risk factors such as diabetes, hypertension, and obesity. This does not mean that if you have that, you cannot get this. And that is also forgotten completely. So we started to work in the intervention with this company, with Ingenieur San Antonio. And we worked on 4 fronts: rest, shade, hydration, and also hygiene, which is also, maybe it's the least important, but it's still very important, especially for women. And here I just show you a few photos of the efforts that are made. You can see here the workers in a shade tent in the early stage. Here they have dark cloth that's now green, but there they are, listening to the health promoter. And this is a mobile shade tent, and the mobile shade tent, because workers are cutting and they move the cutting front quite a bit, and if it is very far away, it's very difficult to walk over the cut cane. So the shade goes with them. And also the hydration in the shade tents. There must be big thermoses of water, and also electrolyte solution. And then the sanitary facilities, toilet and hand washing. So what do we do to evaluate the impact of this program? Well, first of all, we measure the exposure to heat stress in the field, and we do that with heart rate measurements, polar. Then we measure the kidney function, acute and chronic symptoms of heat illness. We make observations, how well is it implemented, what is missing, and we apply questionnaires to workers and supervisors about knowledge, attitude, and practices, which helps also. Finally, we have done organizational management assessments in this company and other companies, which is really very, very useful to improve the management of the intervention. An economic assessment about, well, is the productivity going down, which is not ideal, and what is the return of investment, because of it is quite a big investment to put the protective equipment, the tents, the water, the distribution of the elements, etc. It's quite an enterprise to do that. So how did that turn out? This is a very busy slide, don't worry. I only want to say that we do an evaluation cross harvest. So what happens from the beginning to the harvest to the end of the harvest. But in the meantime, 2 or 3 times over the harvest, we have a baseline, and then we do 2 times cross shift measurements, which are very important. In the cross shift measurements, we look at those acute kidney injury markers, dehydration, inflammation in urine. We look at symptoms, and then at the environmental temperature and the workload via polar. And then cross harvest, we can calculate based on that the incidence of new kidney injury of that worker. The baseline, he has a certain value for serum creatinine or eGFR, the glomerular filtration rate, and at the end of the harvest there's a difference. And we look at if there is an injury, yes or no. And we also look at the incidence of hospitalized acute kidney injury. Just a few pictures of the field work. I mean, it's you have to go to wake up very early. They start at 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning, and so before that they have to get all those the morning measurements, and then in the fields we measure the metabolic and the environmental heat, and then what is the most important is to keep the core body temperatures below. We really measure the body temperature in decibels, 100.4 Fahrenheit. Well, okay, that's 38 degrees for us. So if it is higher than that, it is considered that you can have really pathological changes, subclinical acute kidney injury. So the idea is to keep that down. And this, just look at the upper one. We have worked with the company to make changes in their schedules of prevention for different job titles. But if we look at the cane cutters, which is here, when we started, there were only three rest breaks, 14% of the workday. And when we saw the results of the first harvest, they put 1 more, so 4. And then we saw that in the beginning of the day, the workers have a peak they increase their body temperature very quickly. And that's also seen. We were working then with the military here of the US, and their experts said, yeah, they knew about that also. So they put one more. So at this moment, this is the schedule of work for a cane cutter. He works 6 hours, 80 minutes rest. It's 23% of the workday. And we have shown that is enough under the circumstances that they are working. So here's the extra 10 minutes based on physiological findings. And also one word more about acclimatization. It's very dangerous to start working completely. And with the company, we made schedules. So this is the aim for the production for the different tasks. And every task, when the season starts, when the harvest starts, they start slow, and then over 8 or 9 days, they get to the full production goal. And that is also very important. The shade I've mentioned, that has to be, you can see here now they are clean, more modern, mobile, and also big enough for 15 workers. And they must have stools to sit on. They must have seats or stools to sit on. Before they would just sit on the ground wherever. And inside the tent, you have these thermoses, 40-liter thermoses, or 10 gallons, of water or electrolyte solution. So since they are moving this with the cutting front, it's accessible and close by for the workers. And they have also their own 5-liter recipient to drink from, with a schedule for light work, medium work, and heavy work. So it is very much organized and evaluated. So the design is well, I think rather well evaluated, but the design is important, but also the quality of the implementation. And we saw that the hard way. Here you see the health promoter. This, by the way, that's a very important figure in big enterprises. Someone who really is behind the implementation of the intervention. And here we have an app, or the health promoter, can be man or woman. They put into the app all the variables for how many shade tents are there, is the hydration in place, and they follow up one worker each day, a different worker, to see how that worker complies with the consumption of water and electrolyte solution. And then, these data, they're graphed in different ways, but you can follow them up by week, by month, and over the entire harvest to see where the gaps are, where you have to strengthen for the next time or the next harvest. And just to show you why the implementation is so important, when we started in Harvest 1 in Adelante, it was a terrible situation. The harvesters broke down, and so the workers were not enough protected. And there was a 27% of workers who developed, of cutters who developed a new kidney injury over the harvest. That was quite scandalous, I would say. And then in the next harvest, and it was 9 in the seed cutters that have a little bit less workload. And these workers, it's moderate or low, 2%. But in the next harvest, they paid a lot of attention to the burnt cane cutters, and in just the improved measures, brought that down to 7%, which we considered that was really, really a success. But we did not see the same with the seed cutters. And then we asked the occupational health department of the company to blindly classify the work teams of seed cutters in how well did they apply the intervention. It has a lot to do with the supervisor, the head of the team, and then it turned out that those, you can see a very, very strong gradient from better to worse. So it was implementation that was failing, not the intervention itself. And if you don't do those evaluations, you can come to very wrong conclusions. This is I told you I would show you the data of acute kidney injuries that are hospitalized, and that is quite frequent. And you can also see that in 2017, when we were working there, the incidence rate was 28 per 1,000 workers. This is not cut as all the workers of the company. And when we started the intervention, it went down to 12. And here it stayed with COVID, it was very difficult. And then it went down to 5 in the end. And now they're still following up. What is happening? It is still around there, I think. But the reduction was from harvest 2 to harvest 1, 63% overall, and 94% harvest 3 compared to harvest 1. So I think these data are very strong data about the etiology of heat stress and the possibility to really prevent major disease in workers. So I think this is a very important slide. It is about productivity and the economic return on investment. This is divided in 3 periods. First, before the company even started to implement any intervention, then a period where the company already tried to do prevention, and then Isla Network came in the last 4 columns. And you can see that actually there's not so much difference, a bit lower when the company did its intervention. But take a look at the amount of hours worked. So the production in 2022 was as high as in 10 years earlier, but the workers working almost half of the time. So if you express that in tons per hour, it's almost double their productivity compared to where they started, and it was just a disaster the way they were working. And the best thing was that these are company data, the return of investment. So they, for every dollar that they had invested, they got 160 back by year 3. So that is also something that is very important. From there on, we started with monitoring like this, and now we are developing more technology to make it easier to follow the workers up. And we do need that because really the climate is only getting worse and worse and worse. So what did we do after? We got a big grant from the Department of Labor of the US, and we took the Adelante model to Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala, and all was going very well, but I can show you the change in what is happening when you start doing intervention. With no intervention, you can see here that workers, this is the estimated core body temperature. And here you can see there are no rests, really. Workers just work, blah, blah, blah. And 20% of their time was over 38 degrees, so with hypothermia. And 21% of the workers had an injury during the harvest. This is a company that was already implementing much more. Still not very good figures about the amount of minutes over 38 degrees, and also the incidence of kidney disease over the harvest was high. But you can see that they're starting to rest. But if you compare that to the Center of Excellence in Nicaragua, there's still a little bit to go, but this is completely different. And there was only 1% of the workers who developed new kidney injury over the harvest. So that is what we wanted to do, and we were on the way to do that when the funds were cut, as happened in many places here. So we had a bit difficult time, but right now we are working in El Salvador with other funds and progressing. And also we have started in Mexico. Mexico is a huge sugar producer, after Brazil, the largest of the Americas. So that's, sugarcane will still be covered. And of course, Guatemala is working, they are working, but not with our funds. I've only talked about sugarcane, but it's not just sugarcane or agriculture even. There are other industries and sectors involved, construction, salt pans in India. Well, not only in India, in Nicaragua, we have also salt pans. Mining, actually every hot job where the environment is hot and where the work is hard. So I would like to give you the data of two projects that we are working on. Or some data for the initial data. So you can see that, you have to go beyond agriculture and sugarcane agriculture. We are working in many countries in those commodities, but in Nepal, there's a heavy, many people migrate for labor, and they go to the Gulf countries, Malaysia, India. And sometimes the conditions are very extreme. You have heard about Qatar and with the construction of the stadiums, and Nepal was also there, many workers, and so we gotten a lot of anecdotal evidence. You can find it in the internet, but also in some articles in PubMed of workers that are returning with chronic kidney disease. But it was not well studied. So we are now working with Nepal partners to improve the conditions of the migrant workers. But one of the early studies that was done with one of our partners of the National Network, Christina Jacobsen, she has a student, Swedish student, David Johnson, and he looked in 4 dialysis centers in Nepal to see if the early onset of dialysis was associated with labor migration. And so it was almost 700 hemodialysis patients in the 4 centers. He got data on the migration history, on comorbidities, and also, when did they start the dialysis? hemodialysis. And 25% of those almost 700 patients had been migrants. And 87% of the migrants were males versus 56% of the non-migrants. There it was really women and men just alike. So that is already an indication that something is, if migrants had nothing to do with migrancy had nothing to do with it, you would expect similar percentages. And also the starting date, let's say the age when they start dialysis was much younger for the migrants, about 10 years younger. And odds ratio for starting before age 40 was over 2. And this is one of the slides of his thesis. And the green bars are non-migrants, and you can see what you expect in the population. The age categories add to 100%, each age category. So you can see that young people, they don't migrate, and you can see that they have predominance in the percentage of their here are the numbers for how many people are in each category. But you can see in the brown and orange bars that are migrants, that the brown bars that is early, people come back and they start almost immediately their dialysis. That those bars are concentrated in the ages of 25 to 40 or 45. But also those that started a little bit later, not all people come back and go directly to dialysis. They have a few years before that. They also were much younger than the people who didn't migrate. So that is an early result from the work in Nepal. And we also have started to work with several universities here in the US in construction. This is a data center construction in Louisiana. And you know that the construction sector has the highest incidence of AKI, hospitalized AKI in the US, in the Islas. And a small pilot in 2025 last year found that 26% of the workers that were studied in that site reached levels of hypothermia, and that hypothermia, the levels of the hypothermia were related also to metabolic changes in the urine that indicate acute kidney injury. So now this year, together with these two universities in Indiana and New Mexico, there's a cohort starting that will go on for several years, which is measuring the environmental temperatures daily heart rate with one of those technologies that I mentioned before, a smartwatch that sends the data to a central place. And 4 times over the summer, their cross-shift changes in kidney function measured as individual urinary biomarkers and hydration. So this is starting. There are no results yet, but yeah, the pilot data already indicated that also in the US we have to start working. So that is some of the things that we are doing and that I wanted to bring. Thank you.
So, was there a big need to change in worker mentality, thinking about, oh, I don't need water, I don't need rest, I'm strong enough to do this? Or were the workers pretty aware that they needed more water, more shade, more rest?
it's a mix, of course. When you start in a place and workers have not been exposed to that type of prevention, there are workers that accept it immediately, and there are workers that are resistant. But it is very, you note, and we saw it already in El Salvador, that once they start, they feel better. And they see that their productivity doesn't go down, because that is their main worry. Yeah, why would I rest? I need the money for my family, but once they see that they cut the thing and they feel better, then they start complying. Of course, it's you need also this oversight, the health promoter, the company, because well, when you go out running and you should stop, you take that extra 100 meters, right? So yeah, I'm almost done with my line of work, so I go on. So there must be some control over it, of course, but I think the motivations changes very quickly.
Just to clarify, are they getting paid based off of productivity or how many hours they work?
Yeah, most are paid based on productivity.
Okay.
It depends on the job title. When you have people that do drip irrigation repair, that is not based on.
Thank you for sharing your time and expertise with us today. I have a question. At the beginning, you mentioned how one of the businesses, the industry, let you into their doors to put in some workplace measures. And I'm wondering if you would talk a little bit about the process of them doing that, like you guys getting into that, because I imagine they're pretty political. Yeah. And
in the very beginning, there was a lot of friction with the same company that we are now such big friends with. Was terrible. And well, actually they knew already, because they had started their own prevention, and everybody thought about pesticides, but they also thought about heat, and they started their things, but they were afraid for liability. And but then when it became very much in the open, our CEO, Jason Glazer, he was a filmmaker, a documentary maker at that time. He has now an epidemiology degree, but at that time he was a filmmaker, and he put it into the press. So it really, really important press. And then the company came to us, and they changed their own CEO from an so old-fashioned dumb guy to someone who had much better ideas. So they came to us when we were in El Salvador, and they asked us to work with them. And it has been a very good experience. But there was friction before that, yes.
thank you.
But in general, companies are open. Not all. Taking benefits. And more.
Yeah, I want to ask, what's your theory of change here? I mean, do you think that the data will become so obvious and publicized that employers will take this on and own it? Do you think that it needs to be legislated? You talk about the workers and self-efficacy. They're being paid by the productivity, not by the hour. And so you're able to demonstrate to the workers that their productivity is better. But what do you think is the best way to attack the problem?
I think you must go over different lines. First of all, data are very, very, very strong. And as I said, even those groups that still are looking for mystery things and whatever. I think it's now very well established and acknowledged that heat stress is a key driver, and companies know it, governments know it. So there is an evidence motivation to change, and also the fact that productivity can be maintained is an important part. That has to be emphasized and shown, and together with the company work on that. Yes, I think legislation is very important, of course. But we have also seen that current legislation or guidelines from the say that name, please. No.
Oh,
The
AACGA.
Yes, okay. The amount of rest that they recommend according to light, medium, or heavy labor, and then the temperature is sometimes so extreme that you cannot work. And if that is the case in one day a year, that would be fine. But if you have a harvest to harvest, and your workers have to rest 3/4 of the time, half of the day, it doesn't function like that. So you have to have really an intervention in place that works, and that you can evaluate and adjust also on the place. But there must be regulations, of course. This year in El Salvador, while we were working, not in the groups that we were working with, but in other places, there were 2 workers who died of heat stroke. I'm not talking about kidney now, but heat stroke. And then this is unacceptable, and you need legislation for that. And but how to implement the prevention? I think that is something that really must be. I don't know, you must have very, very good guidelines, and that are feasible, not unfeasible things. No one will do it. I don't know if something else, but motivation.
Do you think that this is going to be more widespread and that it'll be adopted and?
It's spreading rapidly.
Oh, yes.
Before it was denied completely. 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago, it was completely denied. And now it is generally accepted. The way to go about it, that is still, of course, a thing to work on. But more and more enterprises also come for advice. They want to know, what do we do as a company, as an enterprise? What do we do to protect our workers? That construction company in Louisiana, they want the development of programs that are functional for them and that protect the workers. And they don't think about if that is compliant with OSHA or with the whatever. And it must function. And how to control that.
Anything else, you guys?
I have a question. So the interventions are mostly to be proactive, like are some of the workers already dealing with chronic kidney disease, and do the interventions address those needs, or is it that they can't be working?
Well, it depends on the country. In some countries, there's no employment screening, most I would say, and then you get workers that already have very low kidney function, and they are at higher risk to develop chronic kidney disease, of course. Some have it already. I mean, we have seen workers that we have tested at baseline with kidney function really, really low. But in other companies, they use pre-employment screening, and nobody below C4 of 90 gets hired. And then, of course, it's also easier to follow up on those workers during the harvest for the company. But that we provide, for example, we tell the workers when we test them, we give them the results, and we give them a consultation with nephrologist or a specialist in internal medicine on what to do, how to navigate their system, but we cannot provide anything to the workers. That is not the scope of any possibility.
So if you had the opportunity to do any like comparison between, you know, companies and workers that are being paid on a wage rate versus those being paid on an hourly wage, and how open people are to the intervention and how effective the intervention is in those types of circumstances.
Come to the first one, in sugarcane, we cannot do that because everyone is paid by, and the workers themselves, they also, they don't want to get rid of that system, because when you're young and strong, then you say, why would I earn the same as that guy that was 60 and that's all of what I got? So that is a difficult issue. It shouldn't exist. We agree on that, but it's a system for the moment, and no, we cannot compare that. But your second question was if we can compare where there is an intervention and no intervention. Yes. I showed a few of those data in El Salvador. We did that, the very first project where we saw that those that received intervention stayed stable and not went much further down in kidney function, and also just the monitoring of the internal the core body temperature. You can very much see how well the intervention is being done. And actually we use those data also, we show them to the workers in El Salvador. And that's very interesting how they see themselves. I didn't take the break, huh? And so they change. And in general, we have seen differences in especially in acute kidney injury during the day, but also over the harvest in enterprises that are starting to work with us, or that are just first harvest we observe and have no intervention yet, and then when the intervention is fully implemented, it's a huge difference. Yes, much better kidney function markers and much less disease. Also symptoms. I mean, something as simple as a symptom questionnaire.
Good questions, you guys? I have one other question. This is not exactly about this, but in Chicago, in Illinois, and in the world, there is a growing epidemic of lung destruction and the need for lung transplants among workers that are cutting engineered stone. There were 2 cases in Chicago. There were a bunch of cases in California, but this has been known about for decades. And I think in Italy and Spain, there have been lawsuits, a lot of attention to this problem. And here we are 20 to 30 years later, and in the United States, in our hometown, people are dying of lung disease as a result of use of engineered stone. So what do you think we should do? Like, what do you think is the approach of public health to try to address the problem? And I'm thinking of, there's legislation, force policy, there's enforcement, there's shaming, there's you know, all different approaches. What would you think would be the right way to take on this issue?
She's one of the difficult questions, huh? Yeah, I think you have to show data and to prevention is the only way. Of course, people who are ill need treatment, and to get dialysis is not really a solution. Not even a transplant, because people still die premature at a premature age. But so prevention is the only way to go. And how do you increase that? Yeah, publishing. With publishing at all levels, not just in academic journals, also in the press, movies. We have I showed you photos that we put credit at Kashi. Ed Kashi is a photojournalist. He's famous. He has worked for National Geographic, for many others, but that one everyone knows. And he has done exhibitions and really put into stories the consequences. So there are many ways to get this on the agenda of different settings. But I think a combination of working with the private sector and working with the workers and governments, and in the end, the international organizations like ILO, that is, we just have to push. I don't see any other way to do it. No magic formula.
Anything else?
I have one more question. The health promoters, is that someone that works for the company or with Adelante? Like,
No. By the way, we have never paid for any of the materials or because that is part of the sustainability of the project. The idea now is that when we leave, boom, bye. So no, that and they pay. Really, it's not even so difficult to get that on the. So we do all that work of evaluation. You put the health promoter.
does the company train them, or is that coming from?
Sure, but little by little, it becomes part of the company culture. For example, in Adelante, we don't need to train their health promoters, not at all.
I have a question about machinery and automation, if that's something that's kind of coming up.
Can you talk a little bit louder?
With machinery and automation in sugarcane processing and harvesting, and that could be quite detrimental to the workers, even though it's different machines.
Yeah.
Can you like heard of anything like that? And do the work when they talk, do they talk about that and the potential?
Well, sugarcane is a highly complex commodity, production of sugarcane, and of course the automatization in different parts, harvesting and planting and whatever is, especially the harvesting, has progressed enormously. So if you had let's say 3,000 cutters in Nicaragua 15 years ago, now you have much less. You don't come to 1,000, but still, it is first of all, it is something that continues to exist always. There are parts that cannot be done mechanically, or jobs that cannot be done mechanically, and also it is like a case story. If this happens here, you can translate that to other settings that are different, but the story is the same. Excessive heat, environmental heat, and excessive metabolic heat. And So it substitutes quite a bit of the hard labor, which I think is good. There was quite some talk 10 years ago that would cause unemployment and people would not find a job. We have not really seen it. They have problems getting cutters nowadays, all the companies, because they still need a few hundreds or and they maybe part of this project is also they don't want to cut anymore. I don't know. But that may have other reasons.
Thank you so much. You guys, I retaped the heat related on this portion of the lecture from the last class. It was kind of weak, I felt. So there's another video. It's pretty short, but I urge you to look at that because I think that's an important thing to really know about because you'll be faced with this kind of thing for sure. Thanks.
Welcome. Was a pleasure.